This this is the Impressions Exchange Podcast.
Impressions Exchange Podcast.
Where all topics impacting the graphic imaging and printing industry are addressed via in-depth news coverage, analysis, and timely interviews.
Hi, I'm Denise Gustafson, Editorial Director for Printing United Alliance, and the guest host for the special Printing Impressions podcast series in celebration of Women's History Month, highlighting women in the printing industry. During this series, I'll have the opportunity to talk with women from all segments of the industry about their experiences and their journey as a woman in the industry. So today it's my pleasure to welcome Tashina Peplinski. She's president of Graphic Edge Printing and Packaging. So Tashina, welcome.
Hi.
To get us started, can you tell me a little bit about your role currently that you have at Graphic Edge Printing and Packaging?
Yes, so I'm president of the company. We're not a big company. We have 17 employees. I've been working for Graphic Edge for 23 years. And in September, the owner was getting ready to retire and I took over for him. It's been a whirlwind couple of months here, but it's been a lot of fun.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, prior to that, I'd been operating essentially as like a kind of plant manager, production manager, wearing a lot of different hats throughout the company. But it was a good transition, and it's been a hectic couple of months, but it's been a lot of fun and it's been going really well.
So what made you decide to take that next step to really take over? I mean, yes, you were running. What made you say, yes, this is it. This is what I want to do. I want to take on this company.
It was definitely never a goal that I set out for, that's for sure. The owner had approached me quite a few years ago and said that he was starting to plan his exit strategy and wanted to know if I would be interested. His other options were basically just putting the company up for sale or selling it to another print shop or selling it to a holdings company, which I didn't really like the idea of. I've known a number of print shops that have gone through that, and it never generally ends well for the employees, especially when it's a smaller company. So I talked with my husband and took quite a few years and some ups and downs, but decided that that was probably going to be the best route to continue the culture and the company that I worked for so long. So it was quite a process.
I can only imagine. I mean, it's really good that the previous owner really had a plan in place, and was starting to think about it well before he was ready to just leave. Because I think, at least what I've noticed is a lot of people don't really think about that until it's like right upon them. And then it's like, well, what do I do now? I want to retire in 6 months. What now?
Like I said, it was quite a process. There were some ups and downs. It's been going really well. Him and his wife have been staying on. They're going to be on for a little bit, just kind of helping with the transition. And while I knew a lot about operations of the company, the higher level business management and things I have a lot to learn in that area. So I started taking some management classes and some business classes and things a couple of years ago, but having him still around to help has been really, really helpful. And I've had really good support from the employees, which was one of the slightly nerve-wracking things because the owner wanted to keep it pretty hush-hush until we announced it as final. So nobody knew, and I was a little nervous on how the reaction would be.
People that you've worked side by side with for 20 some odd years, and now all of a sudden you're their boss.
Yeah, so it was a little scary, but it was actually unanimous support from everybody. It's all been going really good. So I was very, very pleased with that.
That's phenomenal. So I guess you can say that he was probably one of your biggest mentors through this whole transition.
Yes, definitely. And over the years, I've learned a lot about management and sales, estimating, everything to do with running the company. Sometimes it's what to do, sometimes it's what not to do, but we learn together and make mistakes together and grow together. So it's been a really good relationship.
So I have to ask, how'd you get started in this crazy business?
I come from a family that was always big into reading. Ink on paper has been a big part of my life for as long as I can remember. But when I was about 10, my brother came home with a notepad that he'd printed at school. He was in high school and he'd done the printing class. And I thought that was just the most amazing thing that he had actually printed his own notepad. I just was obsessed with how cool that was. So I very anxiously waited until I got into high school and could get into the print program take the graphics classes and the photography and all of that and learn about printing. Went through all of those. And at the end of my junior year, the teacher looked at me and went, so there's this co-op program. I'd never heard of it. I said, okay. He said, and part of that is we have a couple students that run our district in-house print shop. Okay, that's cool. He goes, you're doing that next year. It's like, oh, okay, I
Okay.
guess I am. So my senior year, I from an hour before school started through first period, myself and another classmate, we were the in-house printers for our little school district. And this was old school technology. This was late 90s and it was high school. So, we're definitely not top of the line. So I was doing blue line paste ups and shooting and stripping and developing my own negatives. We had a little one color AB Dick press. We did poly plates. We were doing typesetting in a page maker on a gray screen Mac. I mean, it was everything. We did the binder, we did everything from front to back. And so I graduated and they called it graphics. So that's what I thought graphics was. And I applied for a graphics job thinking I'm all cool when I was 18 and went, oh, I have no idea what I'm doing as I'm sitting in this interview. But impressed them and I started working for this company part-time and nights, and then I shifted to full-time fairly quickly, and then I started working part-time for their printer, which was Graphic Edge. And fairly quickly I ended up working full-time for Graphic Edge because he needed somebody who could run a press and kind of sort of knew what they were doing on a computer. So
Which you did.
which I did. So I spent about 35 hours a week running a press and 5 hours a week typesetting business cards and letterhead. And we were a 2-color shop at the time. And as Dale needed to grow, needed new things for the company, he assigned me to go learn it. So I learned color management and I learned networking and web development and MIS systems and estimating systems and just everything. So as the company grew, I grew with it. And it's just been a really fun ride. It's never been boring, that's for sure.
I can only imagine. That is an absolutely amazing story.
Well,
Because
thank you.
I can relate. I mean, I in junior high we had a shop class. I learned how to print on a one color, set my own type and whatever. It was really, really cool. But I'm like, oh, I'm going to go into the writing side. So I did journalism, but it still yanked me back in when I eventually, became a journalist, and now I'm in the printing industry as a journalist. So I think it's really, really interesting that for you that was your first inspiration was your brother coming home with that notepad, and really something that I think we're missing in certain instances, because I don't know how many of those classes are still being offered today.
The one I took is gone. I think that whole department, actually, the whole entire tech ed department in the high school I went to is gone.
Mhm.
It's very sad.
It is very sad because we need young blood.
We do.
For you, you came up that way. Was that the best way to get people in? What are ways that you think that we can get more people, younger people into the industry?
Honestly, I really do think that's the best way because you get them interested in it, fascinated with it. I've been extremely fortunate because I pretty much kind of fell into where I'm at through a chain of events. But I pretty much haven't felt like I worked much in the last 20 years. There were a few rough days here and there, but for the most part, it was just something that I did that I really enjoyed, and I happened to get a paycheck so I could pay my bills at the end. So I've been very fortunate in that. And I think without having this exposure to the trades and everything in the schools, and the schools push degrees and college and all that, which are great and they have a place, but for not for everybody.
Yeah. Not
And
everybody's set for college.
nope, I was not. I tried a couple times. I don't think I made it through a whole semester. I think I tried going 3 different times throughout the years. And I just not designed for sitting in a classroom and doing all of that, but I can learn anything I want to when I put my hands on it.
Yeah, it's very different in how people learn, and the trades are something that unfortunately we don't give enough attention to because there's so much need in the trades just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. So I definitely think trying to get those school programs back is very important.
So now, obviously, you've seen a lot in your years as you've come up through the company. And the printing industry tends to be a little bit more male dominated. There's tends to be more males in it. I'm sure that's something you've recognized over the years.
Oh, yes. When I started working for Graphic Edge, I was 19, I was female, I was younger than I looked, or I looked younger than I was. So I had so many strikes against me, and I'm small and petite. I'm every strike against me in the print industry. And my biggest challenge was just being taken seriously.
Hmm.
I was fortunate in that between my father and other mentors and role models growing up, that I had the mentality of, well, the only person that can get in my way is me. So I basically took a lot of the gender bias, and just because it was my personality, and I just ignored it. I was like, okay, you don't want to take me seriously? Well, too bad, I'm still in your face. So I need to get this done and let's move forward. Dale used to have kind of fun. He'd take me when we were starting to get into digital in the early 2000s, and he'd take me to the meetings with the sales reps, and they'd look at me kind of like like I was the assistant coming in to take notes for him in this meeting. And they'd start out and they'd give their whole spiel and all of that. And then Dale would just kind of sit back, and because I was the one that had to operate the machine and hook it up to the computers and run all this jobs. And so I'd start grilling the salesmen, and they would just be totally caught off guard because I'm asking them questions that they don't even have answers to because they're too technical. And
Hmm.
they're very specific questions that I needed answered. Is your machine going to do this? Can it handle this weight stock? How all of these things. And would just kind of throw them off their groove,
Hmm.
and then put Dale in a little bit better spot to negotiate and things like that. So it was fun for the first couple times. And after that, it was just like, oh my God, okay, I got to do this again. All right, fine, do the song and dance. And okay, now you can take me seriously. Let's move forward. But like I said, it's my personality where I just wouldn't accept it.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that just put me in a different light, or if I was just, because I wouldn't accept it, so I was just oblivious to it. Maybe a little of both, but it changed how I moved through things just by the fact that I wouldn't accept the gender bias or the discrimination or anything like that. And I feel like I didn't have to deal with some of the struggles that some women had. I don't know if I was just fortunate enough for the companies that I worked for and the people I interacted with, or what the exact reason was, but I definitely feel fortunate in that it hasn't been quite as difficult for me as it has for other women.
I think part of it is definitely your personality and just wanting to take on and just not going to take no for an answer. That's certainly part of it. I guess for you, you're now in a leadership position within the company. How important is it for there to be women in those types of positions, especially if you're just starting out? For somebody just coming into the industry, how important is it to have you as a president or other women in other different C-suite roles?
I think for somebody who didn't grow up in my upbringing, my dad just treated me like everyone else. I went out in the woods hunting. He expected me to do all the mechanical things. He didn't treat me any differently than my brothers. But I know that's not the case for a lot of people. And I think having them see me just, I don't know how to put it, steamroll through all of these biases and just not accept them and just keep going. I think that exposes them to something that they might not have ever seen before, a situation, an empowering personality that just makes them feel like, hey, I don't need to downplay myself, or I don't need to accept how I'm being treated. I can just be who I want to be and keep moving forward.
Mhm. Looking back on your career so far and how you made it to where you are, do you feel that the role of women has been changing in the industry?
Very much so.
How so?
Part of it is just our cultural shift in general. I feel like there's much less hesitation to accept women in leadership roles. I don't run into, what I dealt with in the earlier days where I had to fight to be taken seriously and to be acknowledged as a contributing person to the conversation or the situation or whatever. I feel like there's just a lot more acceptance of that, and just not even really something that comes into people's minds. There's definitely still a lot of it in other areas. I look at things like Print United when they did the first digital packaging summit down in Florida. Actually, I don't think I was at the first one, I was at the second one. And I sat there and I was one of, I think, two other women in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, I think, was a spouse. So, and now I just was at the digital packaging summit this past November, and there's women everywhere in the room. And not just vendors, they were there as CEOs, they were there as panelists, they were there as print shop owners, they were just all over in the room. And just that change in such a short amount of time, I mean, less than 10 years is massive. You can just see it in the interactions and things, and see it more in the trade shows. You go to the trade shows and it's not all stuffy old men walking around.
Mm-hmm.
So it's definitely there, and I think it's definitely an improvement.
Yeah, usually I say it's the old white guys in suits. You don't really see as many of them walking around anymore.
No, no.
And
Which,
nothing against them, because I mean they've built a lot of these companies and they've made the industry such a success over the time, but things have
oh
changed.
yeah. And I think for the better, because I really feel that when you exclude somebody from input or exclude them from acknowledging their contributions, you're leaving out the next good solution or the next great product or the next big step just because you couldn't take them seriously or didn't see their value in their input, so you just disregarded it out of hand. And I think just the more inclusive attitude really is allowing us to grow even more, because we're getting more perspectives, we're getting more sides, we're getting more views, a broader look at how things can be accomplished.
Definitely. So I have two more questions for you. So the first one is, what trends do you foresee in the printing industry and how they'll continue to impact women's roles? Is there anything that you see that's going to help with that?
I think on one hand, some of the well, I dislike the lack of the personal connections with all the email communications and the digital aspect taking over, where you don't have as much of a personal connection with your customer or another vendor or things like that. I think it also has one maybe not really realized side effect of you can't really you can't form the personal connection, which is definitely a downside, but you can't make a decision on things out of a bias of looking at them and seeing a woman, or looking at them and seeing a young person or an older person, or you're just communicating through email.
Mhm.
And while that has its own ups and downs, it definitely has the benefit of you can't form opinions based on personal bias quite as easily.
Based on how someone looks or acts,
Yeah,
all you can go on is the words that you see on that email page and on that
yeah, which
screen.
there are definitely downsides, no question, but
Yep.
and they can't beat the personal connection. But there's definitely a shift in that. I don't know if it's really a technology shift or anything, but like I said, the cultural shift
Hmm.
is just big.
Being more inclusive just generally.
Yeah.
So my last question is one that I always have fun asking, is knowing what you know now based on, your experiences in the printing industry, what advice would you give yourself if you were just starting out?
Honestly, one of the biggest things I've had to adjust to in the last couple months since taking over the company is I had to start realizing that I had gotten into this habit of making myself less, less outspoken because that irritated people, or downplayed my intelligence because that would intimidate other people. And in general, just making myself less just so that I could fit in or communicate better, or, anything like that. And I've been realizing now as the owner that not only is that not a helpful habit, but I actually, in order to really take this forward and to be able to be the best owner I can be, that I need to be every single molecule of smart, of outspoken, of outgoing, of me, just be me completely. And I think what I would tell myself is to do that sooner. That I think would be my biggest piece of advice is don't be less to fit in.
And that's good advice, no matter who you are.
Yeah, definitely. It's definitely been what I've been trying to wrap my head around the last couple months. And it has caused some upsets in some of my relationships with people because they had this level of me that they were used to seeing. And now that I kind of threw out those restrictions and was just fully me, they're like, whoa, we don't, I don't know that I like this. I don't like you being this dominant person or this take charge, or I think to some degree the letting loose my full intelligence, they don't really believe it exactly, just things like that. And if I could have started learning that sooner, I think I could probably have been even further ahead by now. Not saying I have any regrets, but it definitely would be something that could have improved.
But then you would have just been you and you would have been in your own skin, and it would have just been no need for you to figure out how to fit in. But
Yeah.
that's a whole different story in and of itself.
Yeah, that's a whole nother battle. That's a whole nother level of self-realization and
Mhm.
acceptance and things that I think that transcends gender, occupation, industry, everything.
Indeed, it does. And it's something that people come to when they're ready in a way as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, definitely.
Well, after that really, really profound last piece, I really do appreciate that. But I want to say thank you. Thank you for spending that time. Thank you for sharing a little bit of yourself with us and with me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun. It's fun sharing all of this experience. It's fun getting out and meeting people and getting to share my knowledge.
And I'm looking forward to seeing what you will be doing in the next few years as you kind of fully take this company forward. So I'll be interested to see what happens next.
Me too.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you.